Hello everybody, hope you're all doing well. My name is Steven and this is the Storytime channel. We've got some very smooth and convenient malicious compliance stories today, so let's jump right into our first story of the day by Throwaway 39981. You want to talk to Wendy? I'll get you Wendy. My first job when I was a teenager in the late 1990s was at a certain fast food restaurant whose mascot is a red-headed girl. The pay was horrible, even for those times, and management was generally belligerent and incompetent, but it was a job and gave me lots of stories. Now, given that we were a restaurant named after a person whose founder became the face of the restaurant in television commercials up to his death, we frequently had jerks come through who thought it was cute to say things like, "Is Wendy here?" Or when they're angry, "I know Dave Thomas and I'm going to get you fired." It was so annoying because it wasn't cute since it happened dozens of times a day, especially late at night on second shift. Now, at the time this takes place, a new manager had just completed her training and it was one of her first times managing by herself. I was working on drive-thru when a couple of guys start going on the speaker, "Is Wendy there? We want to talk to Wendy." I try to ignore them since, as I said, this is a frequent occurrence, but these guys just don't know when to stop and just keep saying it all through their order. I was having a bad night. I hated working drive-thru more than any other station at the restaurant, so their antics, which would probably just make me roll my eyes today, were beginning to make my blood boil. They get to my window and they're these two redneck-looking 20-something guys who just keep giggling about how funny and clever they are. I really don't think they were high or drunk given their demeanor. I just think they thought they were delivering comedy club worthy material. I'm trying to hand them their drinks and they just keep asking for Wendy. "Where is she?" one asks. "We want to talk to Wendy," the other one says. I've finally had about enough and that's when I get a plan for malicious compliance. I go over and get my manager and tell her that there are two guys at the window who want to talk to Wendy. She grins, knowing exactly what I'm thinking, and walks over, opens the window and looks at the guys. "Hi, I'm Wendy, the manager here. I heard you want to talk with me. How can I help you?" The guys just think this is the most hilarious thing ever and start erupting in laughter, when she looks at them dead serious and points at her name tag. "No, really, my name is Wendy. How can I help you tonight?" They get really quiet and look at each other. You can tell this wasn't how they expected this to go, and they seem to have no witty retorts in them for if Wendy was actually there. Can we have some ketchup?" one of them finally asks. Wendy smiles, puts some ketchup in their bag and hands them their order. The two drive off without another word while Wendy and I break down in laughter at what we just did. In the long run, what we did that night didn't stop other amateur comedians from asking for Wendy, but it sure did feel good nonetheless. In a generally sucky job that could be really hostile at times, Wendy was a pretty cool boss. Wherever she is today, I hope she's living her best life. Everybody thinks they're a comedian. There's a very easy punchline to be had and nobody's going to think, "Oh well, nobody else has ever made this joke for sure." It reminds me of the joke where people that go to a store and the tag is missing on the clothes go, "Oh, must be free then." It's just one of those jokes in the long line of jokes that are such easy and terrible jokes to make. Do you guys know any more examples of these kinds of jokes? If so, let me know which one in the comments down below. Our next story is by Oh My God It's P1238. Don't leave it up to me to come up with a solution. I'm a procurement guy in the mining industry. My team sits in between the sales team and a couple of hundred suppliers all over the globe. Specifically, we're the emergency fulfillment team who steps in to fill back orders where there are no parts available in the country and it's stopping a machine from working or causing a safety issue. Obviously, a dump truck or an excavator, or any machine really, being out of action on a mine site can cause a flow-on effect to the running of the mine, which leads to a pissed off customer screaming at the sales team, who then puts pressure on my team, causing us to apply the same pressure to suppliers, freight forwarders, distribution centers, etc., until the parts get to where they need to be. Now, understanding a supply chain is not a complex thing. The process is the same every time. The only difference is the previously mentioned pressure being applied. The way my team works is that every 2 hours we run a report and get a new list of parts that we need to source. We figure out where we're going to get the parts from, raise purchase orders against suppliers, calculate an ETA based on what the supplier tells us, including estimated transit time, then enter all of the details and ETA information into an Excel spreadsheet, which is uploaded onto our internal intranet each morning. The sales team can then check it and update customers if they have any questions about their back orders. Here's where I introduce the manager and team leader of the sales team. Between them, they have about 45 years of industry knowledge and seemingly zero knowledge about how a supply chain works. With all of their collective time spent in the industry, they deem it unacceptable that less than 7% of the 12,000 parts our team sources per month fail our quoted ETAs. Mind you, ETA means estimated time of arrival. Suppliers don't ship stuff when they say they will. Flights get delayed, stuff gets lost. There's a million things that can go wrong that are totally out of our control, but none of that matters, it's just not good enough. Fed up with constantly being told how bad we are, as well as how we need to come up with a solution, I sat down with the team and came up with a strategy to ensure that they could never whine about missed ETAs again. We changed our team's working priorities. Priority number 1 now is to check every line on the spreadsheet 10 days before the ETA to make sure it's on track. Now for the fun part. No point checking the ETAs and updating them, but not telling anyone. So I went away in my own time and using YouTube, Google, and whatever else I could find, I taught myself Visual Basic programming language over the course of a month or 2. With this knowledge, I wrote some scripts that I distributed to my team, and with the click of a button, we can now email the sales team every time we update an ETA. That's 700 to 800 extra emails that they have to action each month with no extra manpower. Higher-ups absolutely love the initiative and expect the sales team to proactively inform the customers of the changes so that they can rework their schedules accordingly. How's that for a solution? To top it off, with the new Visual Basic skills I've learned, I've managed to automate a massive percentage of my team's work. Conservative analysis is a saving of about 150 man-hours per month. So we have way more time to stay in front, pressure those suppliers, or just kick back and relax once finished making heaps more work for the sales team. Well, best of luck to the sales team in this situation because that's a lot of emails to all of a sudden have to take on. That's pretty good for a solution, I'd say. This next story is by PugC. Clock in and out at the exact time? Sure. So this was a few years ago when I worked on the floor of a logistics facility. This job was about an hour's drive from my home and it started at 6 a.m. Not really a problem for me, but I like to plan for unexpected delays in my commute, so I tended to be 15 to 20 minutes early each day. That was just easier and less stressful for me. One of my bosses noticed and gave me key privileges and taught me the morning routine of opening the facility as I was often the first person there. Cool, I like to get started when I'm there anyway, so why not? I got in the habit of clocking in whenever I passed the clock we used for that. Then I continued with turning on the lights and other parts of the morning routine. This worked like a charm. I still had to work a full day, but my boss was very flexible whenever I asked to leave early or take a day off. We were all happy, but then that boss quit. New boss wasn't as flexible or practical. After a month, he called me into a meeting and basically told me off for clocking in early. Even after I had made it clear that this wasn't a scheme for me to get extra overtime, I worked full day from 6 a.m. and that it helped the facility start a process each morning. I was told not to clock in early. Why not? Oh, that was simple enough. Whenever I clocked in early, my boss had to make 3 extra clicks on his mouse when approving the hours to be paid. If I only clocked in and out at the correct time each day, he wouldn't have to do all this extra work. At first I was like, okay, I get it, you have many more employees than me and still did the unlocking and morning routine. I just made sure not to clock in before 6 a.m. But then my boss started behaving more and more like a butt towards me and my colleagues, and my will to help out evaporated. The opening and closing routines each took about 15 minutes, and we were a group of 5 people who had done this whenever that was needed and practical. In fact, new boss hadn't needed to do this much at all, as somebody had always done it for him. We got together and compared scores. Nobody was getting any benefits or flexibility out of this boss for doing the extra work, and absolutely no overtime pay for any of us. It didn't take long to agree to stop doing this for the company without at least getting some favors in return. Next Monday, I arrived at 5:40, but decided to sit in my car and listen to music, waiting for 6 a.m. At 6 a.m., there were 40 cars and about 60 workers wondering why the building was still locked when I got out to open. I merely opened the doors and clocked in, went to my workstation, and started working. This meant that many of the workstations were delayed 5 to 20 minutes before they could even see how much work was lined up for that day. And since there was a rule that you had to change into workwear before you clocked in, many people were late that day. All day long, I was waiting for a response from my boss, but he worked 9 to 17. Fun note, the facility closed at 21, and by then my boss was usually at home. So when they were about to clock out, one of my colleagues called him and asked who was locking up tonight, because he couldn't do it as he too had been told to clock out at the exact time. So my boss had to drive for 20 minutes each way to lock up. He was furious at having his evening interrupted like that. Tuesday went much the same way as Monday, except that boss reluctantly had to approve 15 minutes of overtime for the guy locking up. No mention of the morning routine yet. Turned out, boss didn't notice the delayed start and reduced productivity until his boss asked why the first trucks leaving the facility tended to be 20 to 30 minutes late all of a sudden. This meant they got stuck in rush hour traffic more often and even more delayed throughout the day, resulting in more delay fees and lower customer satisfaction. My boss's boss knew that I had opened the facility for a while, and he actually asked my boss why I no longer did it. When my boss evaded him and didn't give him a clear answer, he sought me out and asked me himself. I told him straight out that I had been told to not clock in early, and since I wasn't on the clock, there was no reason for me to work. The boss had in effect deprived the company of 15 to 20 minutes of free work each day from me and the rest of the group of 5 by insisting that we clocked in and out at the exact times. Not to mention the cost of the delays caused by the late start. And all this because he couldn't be bothered to make 3 extra clicks on his mouse to overrule the clock when approving the pay. The very next day, we were informed that opening and closing routines were now a part of the job description for the group of 5, and that we would get paid for the extra time spent. Next payday, the group got together and calculated that we were in effect paid almost a full hour for re-adding the opening and closing routines to our work. 2 weeks later, my boss was laid off, quit, or something. Next boss just groaned in exasperation when he heard what had happened. He was a good guy and even a better boss. I was sad to quit the job when he was there, but another opportunity came along and it was too good to pass on. I think it just goes to show you that a boss can make or break a job. Good boss, oftentimes great experience. Bad or incompetent or just lazy boss, and you'll probably end up having a bad time like this. Our next story is by postsflowerpics. You think I'm trying to steal your money? Have it your way then. Some background. I'm a commercial and industrial HVAC/R technician. We specialize in large AC and refrigeration systems, mostly involving chillers. It's first thing on a Monday morning when I get a customer's call in about one of their chillers being down. Cool beans. I don't have much on my schedule for today and haven't even left the house yet. This sounds like a great place to start off for the week. I get there and find all kinds of problems with this chiller. We're talking at least a week worth of repairs, assuming all the parts come in the next morning. For some context, this machine is absolutely ancient. By this point, I'd lost count of how many times we tried to sell them a new one. Regardless, I make some phone calls so I can work up a price on the repairs and see how soon I can get the parts. A few minutes in, and I find out the manufacturer no longer supports this model. No big deal. I explain to the customer that we can either replace it or retrofit it. In my opinion, retrofitting a machine this old is a waste of time and money, but we have to give them the option. It pays just fine either way. After a 30-minute conversation with the customer and several lengthy phone calls, the customer decides it's finally time to replace the chiller. I tell him he'll get a quote in the next few days and talk to our sales team who sends it their way. Within minutes of receiving the proposal, the customer is blowing my phone up about how the price is too high and we're trying to steal their money. I'm driving so I can't talk, but have my phone mounted where I can see any calls and/or texts I receive. After about 15 minutes, I pull onto the shoulder and give him a call back. He's still pissed and starts yelling about how we added extra stuff to the quote just to take their money. Here's the thing. This new chiller uses a different style compressor than their old one. These new compressors are really loud. Normally this doesn't matter, but this chiller sits less than 100 feet from a large neighborhood and a daycare. The unnecessary extras he's complaining about are the sound dampening options for the chiller. Are they expensive? Sure. At the end of the day though, it doesn't really matter. They're going to need them. I tried multiple times to explain this, but he refused to listen and informed me that our conversation was over. Give me what I want or I'll find a company that will. You know what? Sure thing, boss. I inform our sales office who had me hand deliver the new proposal along with a document explaining the issues with what he's asking for. I had him sign it and left him a copy. 3 months and a few $100,000 later, and guess who can't run their brand new chiller? Why, might you ask? It violates the city noise ordinance. Anytime it starts up, they get fined. Need to fire it up to do maintenance? Fined. Need to fire it up because the other chillers are down? Fined. Control system hiccups and it accidentally starts up? Fined. Their brand new chiller is nothing more than a big, expensive paperweight. Even better though is that we're currently installing all the sound dampening equipment we originally quoted. However, as we're having to change everything out in the field instead of it being installed at the factory, it's going to cost almost 3 times as much as it would have in the first place. But hey, maybe they'll listen next time. Well, maybe they'll listen next time if they can still hear. I think OP is completely fine. They pretty blatantly tried to explain, this is going to be way too loud, you need these options. Nope, just give me what I want or I'll find a company that will. They got exactly what they asked for. And our final story of the day is by SushiSchwinn. Tennis coach got exactly what she asked for with a few extra bruises. When I was in high school, I was on the tennis team, and our varsity coach was a saint. The JV coach, however, regularly made us wonder if she'd been dropped on her head as a child. To boot, she barely understood anything about tennis. So all the poor junior varsity kids got taught how to grip their rackets wrong and hit wrong. And us varsity kids would reteach them when she wasn't looking. It was a small town, so the whole tennis team was maybe 30 kids. On varsity, our coach would set up cones around the court for us to try to hit when we were serving, so we could improve our aim. If you hit one, then coach owed you a snow cone from the local stand in town. The cones were famous around town and everyone loved them. Nothing tasted better after a long practice in the heat. The JV coach, once again making us question her mental capacity, told the JV kids that if they hit her, then she'd buy them a snow cone. I really don't know how hitting her, which would be out of bounds, was a good way to help them improve their aim. Anyways, she never specified that the offer only applied to junior varsity. So soon enough, the varsity kids took her up on the offer and started pegging her every time she was on the varsity courts. We'd always apologize profusely and pretend it didn't happen on purpose, but she was true to her word though and always bought us a snow cone. The poor woman probably bought about 10 snow cones a week for the varsity kids until the varsity coach put a stop to it. So when they were talking about the coach having a lack of mental capacity, I was thinking that they just didn't understand tennis and that they were going to be some kind of mean, rude, overall just bad JV teacher. But she actually seemed to have a few screws loose where she wanted people to just constantly peg her with tennis balls for some reason. And then when varsity, the kid she didn't even tell the offer to, as far as I know, was hitting her with the tennis balls, she bought them snow cones anyways. You would think that they would at least restrict it to JV, or maybe when it keeps happening so often they would shut it down, but no, this lady just kept up with it. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today, so if you have a favorite story of the day, let me know which story and why in the comments down below. But besides that, if you enjoyed the video today, please give the video a like and subscribe if you haven't, and turn notifications on so you'll never miss an upcoming video. No matter what you did, whether it was just watching the video, subscribing, commenting, thank you all so very much for supporting me right here on the Storytime channel. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you all next time right here.